Okay, thank you all for joining us today at the Killeen Fire Department. We have 5 of our firefighters here who deployed, of our 7, to help in the hurricane relief efforts in both North Carolina and in Florida. As our release said, we had one firefighter who initially was asked to go assist in Florida and then went to North Carolina, where the bulk of that impact was for Hurricane Helene. And then we had additionally 6 more firefighters who were called out to Florida. And of course, we know we had Hurricane Milton as well. So I'm going to pass the microphone over to our Fire Chief James Kabinski, who will give kind of an overview before we pass it over to our men who were there on the ground in those hurricane relief efforts.
Good afternoon, everybody. James Kubinski, Fire Chief, first name James, last name common spelling K-U-B as in boy, I, N as in Nora, S-K-I, Fire Chief for the city of Killeen. First and foremost, my job is easy. I get to say yes or no when the team leaders here call and say, can we deploy? So by no means did I do anything special other than support the men and women on our deployment teams. Our deployment teams are extremely important in the fact that these are Texans, usually helping Texans, and on occasion helping other citizens who live in the United States, in this case in North Carolina and in Florida. The special operations teams have deployed 27 times in fiscal year 24. Texas Task Force 1 members from Killeen deployed 17 different times over the last year, and then our TIF-MIS teams, which are typically wildland, deployed 10 times over the last year. So these are very busy teams, and the commitment that these men and women make is no small feat. And simply the work that has to be done, this is not just sitting around and hanging out in a hotel room waiting for something to happen. They are usually deploying because there is work to be done, and these are 12 or 18-hour days with very little rest, and they are days that they're away from their family. It's not like you're at the firehouse here where you are working for 24 hours and you get to go home for 48. These are solid days away from your family during the deployment without returning back to your family. In this case, Battalion Chief Bannister gone for 20 days, and the rest of the team members gone for 14 days away from their family, working each and every day, no less than 12 hours each day, working the hard tasks. So we were very proud of them, and in no short order, the work that they did is a monumental task, and the devastation that they have seen is nothing short of what we've seen most recently with Harvey. So this was some major devastation that was seen, and what they have seen is definitely something that's going to be once in a lifetime for most of them. So with that, I'll pass the microphone down to the team members. They'll introduce themselves.
Philip Bannister, Phillip Bannister, Battalion Chief.
Joshua Minix, Joshuamenix, firefighter paramedic.
Mark DiGiacomo, Mark, DI space capital GIACOMO, and I'm a firefighter paramedic as well.
Marvin Taylor, MarvinTaylor, and captain.
Mark Whiteley, MarkWhiteley, captain.
I'll go first. Chief Kabinski, like, just tell me, obviously, like you said, being the guy that, does the approval for sitting out for, relief assistance like this, obviously there are people in those places that are in need. But like you just mentioned, you're sending your guys to a, potentially hazardous places for them too, being away from their family. So, what was just the limit in that in terms of like, obviously there are people need help, but these guys of our community maybe going to places, there's a potential they may not come back.
That is the unfortunate reality of the job that we sign up for the day we put our hand in the air and we take an oath to become a firefighter. Just showing up to work each and every day, there is that risk that we take that we may not go home. Very small risk, but it is a risk. In this case, these men and women are very highly trained, especially with our deployment teams. They have a much higher level of training And so I know that their level of preparation, preparedness, and their awareness to the situations that they're going to be going into is one that is even higher than what most of our firefighter paramedics here in the city of Killeen are trained to. So I have the utmost confidence that every one of our firefighters are trained to a level of awareness to be able to have the tools they need to go home to their family every night. But especially our deployment teams, they have even a higher level of training.
Why do you think it's so important that, states help each other out when things like this happen?
It's called being a good neighbor, and not if, but when. The time is going to come where Killeen is going to need help. And while we are a very prepared fire department and we have the fortunate ability to have resources greater than those of our neighbors, there is no fire department that can handle any one disaster all by themselves. And there is going to become a time where the Killeen Fire Department is going to need the help of Texas Task Force 1 or task force from other states. So we know that we're putting in our efforts so that when we need to call and help, they're going to come and help us.
My question is for any of the team members. How was it when you set foot in these places and just seeing the communities and the help that you all needed to give to those communities?
I guess I'll start with that one. The whole premise of this, we kind of go back to answer one of your questions a little bit earlier, was everything's calculated. When we start moving out the door, we make the request early, hopefully a notice event, and that can push us in the area. That lets us kind of set up ahead of time, have us a place to go that's not walking in blindly. So we have force protection. We have an environment that we show up to, and we know that we're going to at least land safely. And then to go from there is kind of at the mercy of the storm or whatever transpires next. If we're pre-positioned, and Chief usually lets us answer that call for that one to go out to get us hours away, if not states away, to be in these positions. So when the storm does land, we were ahead of the hurricane a day. Then we were kind of settled in, awaiting, pre-planning the area, looking at the streets, roadways, kind of looking at projected pathways. And then once it moves through, we fall right in behind it. For us, they flew us in on the Chinooks to the islands to start that work out there. You'll be the first boots on the ground post-hurricane that any of these folks have seen, or any of the groundwork that's there to be done. You'll be first eyes on. Paint the picture of how big is big, how bad is bad for the overhead.
And then I also wanted to ask, was it difficult to possibly separate your personal feelings as just for the job that you all had to do, and seeing how maybe families were reacting or people's homes that were lost? Was there just any moments where it was like, I do feel like sorry for these people and I want to help them, but I'm just going to make sure I get the job done?
So I think initially there's everybody's been trained up to this level. There's a lot of emotional conditioning that goes into what we do to be able to walk up and essentially triage the event. And you do have to separate from your emotions. I don't want to say it's a hardened event, but you do have to make those tough calls of what is the mission at hand, what is our tasking, and then you have to be ready for that event. So we do a lot of emotional conditioning for a lot of folks, and then we do a lot of follow-up when it's done to make sure everybody's okay, the peer support, that whatever transpired during the event is not having long-term effects on any folks. So we definitely monitor that from beginning to end. Texas A&M Task Force 1 has an entire peer support group. In this one, for example, the chaplain is not considered part of the deployment configuration, and Texas A&M paid for the chaplain to come down separately to be tasked with the teams on top of that, just so they had that point of contact and for the peer support portion.
I wanted to ask if how this experience compares to other disasters that you guys have responded to, and if you guys plan on going back.
So in this instance, I think especially in the areas that we worked in, it was very similar to a lot of hurricanes and flooding events that we've done in the past, specifically in Texas. Maybe not quite the extent of the devastation, but we're pretty familiar with a lot of flooding and hurricane events, river flooding, things like that. So we were pretty well prepared for that as far as being able to be ready for what was actually on the ground there.
At least for me, obviously a lot of Central Texans, are only, knowing about the devastation, obviously with Killeen and Milton, just through TV, through social media, things like that. But, you all were boots on the ground. So if y'all, anybody's able to share everything they want to, but like, what are just some of the anecdotes or some of the things that y'all seen, in person, like just really, maybe, twisting the heartstrings and like really let you know, like, this is why we're out here. These people are in dire need.
So I think in a lot of these instances, especially with our teams, when we go to help people, these are people's homes that are flooded. They may not have access to fresh water. They may not have access to food. Their vehicles aren't going to be able to drive through water. So our goal with a lot of these is we'll go and check up on people, from house to house to make sure that they have the things that they need to survive. So whether that's getting them out of those homes or making sure that there's fresh water brought to them, food brought to them, whatever they may need, that's a lot of the stuff that we do as far as checking up on people if they are not in imminent need of rescue or evacuation. So.
No, I got nothing.
Anything you want to add?
Captain Bennett, I'll direct this one to you. Unfortunately, the compressed timeline of different natural disasters going on out there. You not clarifying your location timeline for me, but seeing your initial deployment to North Carolina, and seeing obviously the devastation was built in. Just seeing it, being aware of it. Like, what was your thought process during that time? Like, I'm here helping these people that are in dire need, but I see very soon there's going to be another community that was recently hit that's going to be in dire straits as well.
I don't think anybody saw North Carolina receiving the impact that they received. That hurricane kind of took a little shift up top. We were in Florida doing the primaries and the hasty searches, clearing buildings, clearing structures. We try to take that count down from an unknown amount of people missing, either find them, locate them, happy and well, or in not so good conditions. And then we try to get that count down from the thousands down to 0, if at all possible. And in the process of doing that, once we had the primaries and done that we could affect on the ocean side, the dirty side of the storm when it blew in, they redirected us the very next morning, an early morning redirect to push you up to North Carolina because the mudslides, the flooding as the water was receding, and that completely devastated those mountain towns, for the lack of better words there. And they're not used to seeing that kind of water. They're not used to kind of seeing that kind of event. It had rained 3 weeks prior to that, so they were completely saturated. So when that 31 inches of rain came in that 24 to 48 hour window, the ground just gave way. Things that you couldn't expect to see. Nothing was stable. Even when we got there, nothing was safe to stand on. So we were constantly evaluating soil, structural specialists out there evaluating bridges. The amount of folks that were out there rebuilding homemade bridges to get across areas that were just completely devastated, wiped out, whole towns, lower portions. There's no water. There were 5-6 days before we could even see somebody at a house because we just couldn't get in there. There was no flying into them. There was nothing of that nature. So that devastation is, you kind of roll from one to the next one. And then once we wrapped up the initial primaries in Hastings and in North Carolina, the term is excessed for that event and then reallocated back down to Milton. So it just, wherever the need is, that's where we shift and move to, and whatever the resource is. For instance, we sent Texas in totality sent helo crews, water MRP package with the EMAC, and they sent the entire a type 1 structural team, FEMA support. And then in addition to that, we sent an IST team overhead for the state of Texas in general. So City of Killeen actually participated in 2 of those major events. We went with the structural team for the FEMA aspect, and then we sent a full complement in the water side, the EMAC agreement for Milton as well.
So I wanted to ask, can anyone just really elaborate on how important it is to keep such a level head in dire situations like this?
A level head? Oh. In my downtime, I am joking and I'm having a good time. But when it's go time and it's time to, step up and lead the team or direct our guys to effect our rescues and evacuations, I really hold everybody on the team to a high standard of seriousness and dedication, and because there's just no room for error with the stuff that we're doing.
And then I also just wanted to ask how you all mentioned the trainings that you go through in order to prepare for things like this. If you are able to just briefly explain, like, how does that training go for intense situations?
Well, we have annual training. We recertify, at least in this aspect, since we're talking about Swiftwater. We have a certain amount of continuing education hours that we have to maintain, physical skills that we have to maintain, which unfortunately is dependent on weather as well. So we have to have a Swiftwater environment where we can actually do these trainings. So locally, we have some areas on the lake below the spillway. When the water's high enough, when they open the spillway, we're able to train there. It gets the CFM's high enough to where we can actually do our maneuvers there, train. We also have teams that will actually leave the state. We'll go as far as Tennessee to complete the proper training, because that's where we can find the acceptable water, if you will, the rivers with enough flow to actually do the training that we do. So, and again, the department supports us and allows us to do this training, but this is training that everybody on the team takes upon themselves. This is their hours, their time, that they get away from their families. Chief Kubinski, Chief Bannister, nobody is requiring us to do this. Everybody that's on this team that does any of these trainings or any of these hours, they're basically volunteering that time away from their families and away from their jobs to complete this. So it's a lot to it.
Can you elaborate on what it means to be a part of the water rescue squad or team, and how many?
Well, like everybody up here said, it's a different breed. It is a commitment that you're making to the team. It's something that you are stepping forward to do. You're not, you are selected. You can stick your hand up and you're measured and evaluated, and then you're able to do that. You're selected on that team. But it definitely takes a lot of commitment to be able to do that. And as far as our team, I don't know the total number on our whole team for the department, but we have several to include with the water team and the wildland team as well.
And so for anyone who doesn't mind sharing, what was your family's reaction when you all told them that you were going to go out and help in disasters?
Everybody speak at once?
Man, my wife cried. My wife, my daughter, my mother, they all thought we were running straight to the hurricane and that we were going to get demolished. I had to reassure her multiple times. When the hurricane makes landfall, we're going to be 150 miles away, and then we'll move in. But still, it's the 2 days of travel that they're worried about. Lack of sleep while we're driving, and I've got a great supportive wife and family, and but she's very emotional anytime we deploy.
Yeah. Same. The family's always a little nervous. They do understand that we are trained, but as everybody has a family member of some kind, you could be a doctor, but they don't believe you until they see you do it. So a lot of this stuff, they're all nervous, they're all worried, but you reassure them that with the training that we do and the stuff that we do, that everything is a calculated risk, but it is done in the safest manner possible for the greatest good. So.
To add on to that, I appreciate Pasco County for taking care of us during this event, and the state of Florida for everything that they provided, whether it was shelter, food, water, communications, all those things.
I think, as regards back to the families, I think at this point in our careers, most of our families realize the goal of our jobs is to help communities, help other families, help take care of people. So, they may be nervous about the situation that we're going into, but I think ultimately, when you're married to a first responder, they understand that your goal is to help communities, help people, do as much as you can for others, and they're usually pretty understanding of that. So.
I think I have a real unfair advantage in this category here because being a product of this town, my wife is also a daughter of a military family, so she is very, very used to dad may be gone for a little while concept. So she's very in tune with that. She's very in tune with the kids and make sure everything goes around. So without that support network here, something's always going to break when we're gone. Something's going to get tore up. But a lot of things that don't get talked about is just because 7 people would be sitting at this table, they went out the door, the remaining 18 that would be behind on with the remaining of the 18 we have on the water squad would be here, and it's only a phone call away. Actually, probably worse than that, because if somebody finds out you may or may not need something, the nature of our business is people will force their hand into helping you if you want it or not. So people are going to start showing up and take care of things. All they have to do is hear that is needed. So as much as we're out there doing work to take care of other people, we know that nothing's going to go unattended back at home.
I had a question about, talking about, obviously the role of, first responder is to save other, families' lives. But, obviously, going to, South Florida, going to Asheville, North Carolina, places like this, I can imagine, not a lot of people are familiar with Killeen, honestly, just the town or even where it's at. So what was y'all's reaction from, what reaction did y'all receive from residents in these towns where it's like, hey, these firefighters from a city I've never heard of in Texas are literally saving our lives right now? Like, that's a huge thing. So, like, what was some of the residents' reactions in terms of, I'm assuming, gratitude, but also just maybe surprised about you guys being the ones to really answer that call?
So there was task force from all across the United States. We saw people, teams from as far as Los Angeles, all the way to Kentucky. There's obviously Florida's. There was several, Colorado, Arizona. There were several different task force there. When they see us, we're Killeen, but we're also representing Texas as well. And a lot of people were very thankful for us to be there. Anytime we were out in public, there was gratitude. People were saying, thank you. We really appreciate you guys coming here to help us. And I think everybody was really grateful to have the help and know that, just because we weren't from Florida, that everybody was willing to come and help.
I want to make sure I didn't cut off anyone when there was a question about just the emotional aspect of it. I don't know if anyone had any more to add to that as far as how you can kind of separate, but is it still, we're trained to separate, but you also still feel that emotion. So I don't know if anyone else had something to say about that, but I think I might have cut someone off, so I want to make sure I didn't.
Thanks. You've been a man of many words. We'll give you a chance to share.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Just, although you are trained to kind of have that emotional separation, what type of emotional toll does it take on you? I can't remember who asked that question, but I was just
Well, the biggest part is just being away, of course, from your family. That adds to it. When you're going up to a house that has kids the same age as your kids, or grandparents the same age as your grandparents, and they're in need. They're struggling. They're hurting. They're in the worst time in their life right now. You kind of sometimes, when you're in the thick of things, you think, oh man, this could be my family. So you have to kind of put that aside and do the job at hand, the task at hand, do what we're trained to do, and we mentally prepare for during our trainings and outside of our trainings too, and put that aside. But at the same time, you're always going to have that in the back of your head, and this could be my family. So this is somebody's family, so I'm going to do what I got to do to take care of this. To this family to the best of my ability, because this is somebody's grandparents or somebody's brother, sister, aunt, uncle. So that's just something that kind of goes through my mind whenever we're doing these evacuations or these rescues, is treating them if this was my family.
I had one more question, and it's just for everyone. Now that you all are back, just how are you all feeling, maybe mentally, physically, and just being back with your families and back home?
Tired. A little tired, but other than that, I think we're all in good spirits. We were in good spirits on the way home. Of course, we're all firefighters, so we're joke, laugh, play on our downtime, like Captain Whiteley has advised. Is one way that we keep our sanity when we're out there is when it's not mission time. It's time to kind of sit back and relax a little bit. We can kind of joke and get back to our normal firefighter self. But being back home, it's I'm tired. I'm sure we're all tired. But just getting back in the groove of things again. You know, your wife and your family, your kids, they've gone, days without you there. So things change. They get in a routine, and now, oh, daddy's home. Now it's time to get back in the strict routine again. So getting our lives back in routine, and not just our jobs, but other jobs that we have, and other appointments and tasks, honey-do list, stuff like that. Just getting that all back in the groove of things until the next alarm comes out and the next call for help comes out. We're just back to the original tasks. So, anybody else?
I was, going through, been like obviously, being on the deployment team, like this is like a blue job, but obviously this level of devastation is not, common. So I hesitate to say learn. What do you take away from something like this and seeing this, amount of tragedy, devastation? And like I said, just, whether it's holding your kids or making it a little tighter at night, or like being maybe just aware of something that you may not have been aware of before. Like, what are the certain takeaways you see for being like from coming from all that destruction?
I learned a lot during this deployment. It was a different deployment than we're used to because it was a state a EMAC request, so it was out of state. And I think all of us here, I believe on our team, was our first time going out of state on an EMAC. So we learned a lot logistically that we can do better next time. But when it comes to emotional, just learning how to manage your time, talking to your kids at any chance you can get, calling your loved ones, calling your families, advising them you're okay, explaining to them that things are going to be better. They're not terrible, as the news likes to put it sometimes, but they're still not good either. The devastation, it puts a toll on you mentally, it puts a toll on you physically, and it kind of lasts a little bit. In your mindset, and it's probably going to last with us for a little while, and probably throughout the next couple deployments, as we see houses underwater, cars underwater, people needing help. Thinking back to what we saw in Florida, will probably pop up in our minds. And with that, we just have to utilize our peer support team that the City Killeen offers, and work through all that. So.
Can I just ask, are there any specific stories that you guys have from there that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
I don't have one. Do y'all have one particularly?
I think one thing that a lot of people took away from there is Florida is a beautiful area, and just in general. And then North Carolina, the mountains is a beautiful area. So some people were having some little bit of a kind of take backs as you're traveling to and from a devastated part, and then you're in this beautiful hillside country, and you almost feel bad for enjoying that piece of the day, but you're always looking for that one highlight of the morning, highlight of the day, or that piece to keep looking forward to. This is what these folks had before this. And so I think that was a lot for a lot of folks out there, is some people were kind of feeling guilty for being inside some of this really nice area, or wanting to enjoy just that scenery for just a second in the middle of all this devastation. But it's very similar to like nothing's left and there's one flower left sticking out outside the concrete, and you're really kind of taken away by the little things like that. So I think that was a lot for a lot of folks, just little shines, a little rays of light and hope for all these other people out there, what it's going to return back to.
And I just want to wrap it up with, if you guys have any preparedness advice. This is the Killeen was the deadliest name Hurricane 6 Katrina in 2005, and so although it's not really something that they could have prepared for, I don't think, but preparedness information that you guys might want to put out to the community.
Yeah, I don't think many people are truly prepared for an event like that, just in general. I mean, if you take a look around, and are you ready to be without water for a week or two? Are you ready to be without a grocery store run for a week or two? Are you ready to be without power for a week or two? And the answer for most folks is no. I mean, we've seen it in our ice storms over here a couple of years ago, that the shelves were quickly barren. Fuel became an issue. Water became an issue. Lift stations were down. And so, I mean, just what I would take away from that is, if you can't take care of your home life, how can you take care of the next person next to you? So if you can't take care of what's being done at home, how do you look left and right to help the next person that needs your help? So if you're going to do anything to help the totality of an event, is make sure your home life is squared away and ready to go. and then you'll be able to help somebody else. And it all comes full circle. So the more we help, the more it gets passed around. It becomes contagious. It really does. So we go to these places, and you would think that you showed up in a small town in the middle of nowhere in the mountains of North Carolina that people would be kept to themselves and everything else. And within hours, there are people coming from all across the state, trailers of water and food and snacks and clothes and everything you could possibly think of. People aren't asking. They're just loading stuff up on trailers and showing up. So the people that aren't affected are trying to provide that help, but that could be days out. You know, you don't know when that's coming. So you have to be ready for that.
Thank you. Thank your families. Thank you, media, for joining us today. And have a great day. Thank y'all so much. Thank you all.